Hey guys, MiracleMAX back again. In a recent video I showed you how to diagnose for a blown head gasket. If you haven't seen that video, follow this link here and check it out for yourself. Don't panic, I'll be waiting here when you get back. Oh, hi, you're back, are you? Just checking out my latest TAP magazine. What'd you think of the video? One thing I was a bit disappointed with was the fact that I couldn't show you evidence of a blown head gasket. But good news, since then I've been working on a vehicle that actually did have a blown head gasket to a major extent. So I'll show you some video clips of that, and it's actually pretty damn hilarious, to be quite honest. And also I've got that Nissan X-Trail back again, and I want to see if I can improve firstly the water that comes out the exhaust system, and also some of that milky stuff that's inside the rocker cover and the oil filler cap. So let's check it out. One of the things that the customer complained about before was the amount of water that came out the exhaust, and that's a fair comment. But the problem being in a cold area, and as I mentioned already, he's a baker that starts work at about 1 in the morning, so there's a lot of moisture around, he doesn't get the engine hot, etc. And one of the problems, of course, is a byproduct of combustion, is water. Now that water, as we can see here, is going to sit at the lowest point, isn't it, which is the muffler. Generally speaking, you'll find a thing called a weep hole. There's not one drilled here. There should be a little tiny hole about 2 mil in diameter that allows any of that water to escape. Now keep in mind, we live in an area where we have sub-zero temperature, so quite often we come out and all the lawns are frozen over, etc. So what do you think happens to any water that's collected overnight in the muffler? Well, most likely that'll be frozen as well. When the engine warms up, it is slowly released in the form of vapour and perhaps water as the ice melts, and that comes out the exhaust. What I'd like to do today is just drill a 2 mil hole just here at the lowest point and see how much water is actually going to come out, and hopefully that'll help the amount of water that comes out of the exhaust in the future. I'll just drill a hole at the bottom there and see how much water we can collect. Just keep in mind, all that water inside the muffler is going to want to rust the muffler, isn't it? So getting rid of that water is important. How much have we collected? Let's have a look. So how much water was accumulated in the muffler? Let's zoom in and have a look at our container. Well, have a look at that. 675 millilitres. That's over half a litre. Half a litre of water stuck in his muffler, quietly rusting away the metal. No wonder the customer was complaining. Well, hopefully that's sorted out the major water that spits out the exhaust pipe. Let's head up to the front of the vehicle and address another issue. Another one of the customer's complaints was the fact that he was getting a milky substance in the oil filler cap. Has that improved? Certainly hasn't, has it? That's definitely milky. But we're not getting a milky substance on our dipstick. As you can see there, it's not milky at all. There is a little bit of residue there, but that's actually on the dipstick itself from condensation. What else could be the problem? One thing that I didn't address last time that could be part of the problem is a thing called a PCV valve that's kept here. What that does is it allows all the vapours that have been built up in the rocker cover to come out through a one-way valve and be allowed to go back into the inlet manifold to be burnt in the intake system. So I'll pull that out and I'm sure that that will be blocked. So this thing here is the PCV valve. This style is actually screwed in. That's a little bit unusual, but that's screwed in. That goes into this hole here, and then this section here goes into this pipe, which in turn, as we can see, goes back to the inlet manifold over here. So this has a one-way valve in it, as you can see, that should push down on a spring, which it is. These things have a service life and therefore should be replaced on a regular basis. If we apply vacuum, you can even suck on it there, and that should pull back, and when you blow on it, it should seat. But because this is done, I think it's 182,000 Ks, I do want to replace this unit, and because of this issue that it's having, I'm going to replace it anyway. After finding out that this type of PCV valve is a threaded style and only available as a genuine item, from what I can tell, and it costs around about 70 bucks, so I decided to give this one a clean, see how it goes. I've also checked for obstructions, etc. in these hoses coming back to the inlet manifold, and also this breather hose that goes up to the air intake system. I've cleaned those out, make sure they're all okay. So for now, we'll give that PCV a shot. If it creates a blockage or whatever, then I'll speak to the customer about putting it in. But let's sort out this issue with the condensation and of course our faulty radiator first. The X-Trail was parked outside last night, all night. It wasn't sub-zero last night, but it did get down to 0. You saw me drain out all that water out of the muffler. I'm just about to start it up. I've pushed it into the workshop. I didn't start it this morning on purpose because I want to see what it looks like. So after taking out, 650 mils worth of water, this is our first start up for the morning. Let's see what it looks like. So in comparison to the last video, there's absolutely no water coming out in comparison. So that's obviously a good idea. It's still leaking a tiny bit out of the weep hole, but hardly, probably a drop per 5 seconds, so it's no big deal. But I'm happy that I drilled that hole. That seems to be a good solution for the problem that he was having with build-up of water in the exhaust system. Just as I did in my last video, I wanted to see if there was water in the sump. So all I did was undo the sump plug a tiny bit, drain out a fraction of oil and see what came out first. Remember in the last video that water will sink to the bottom, oil will be next. So first thing to come out the sump should be water if you've got a blown head gasket. I double checked it this time just to make sure. See what came out? Just oil, nothing but oil. So I know I've double checked my work, I'm pretty happy with it. Why is it running at the moment? I'm glad you asked. What I've decided to do was to put in some engine flush. The reason I've done that is to try and get rid of all that condensation build up, put in some new oil, and I'm going to put in some synthetic stuff. It's generally meant to have 1050 in it, but I'm going to put in 540, and that hopefully will help cope with the cold starts that this guy does early in the morning, and hopefully get rid of some of that condensation. So I've just run that through. Got another 5 minutes to go before I drain it, and then I'll do my oil as well as my filter. Hopefully that's got it sorted. Oh, by the way, remember that faulty radiator that it had? I'm doing that right now as well. Do the whole lot all together. Done and dusted, hey? That's the oil draining there. I guess you'd agree that there's no indication of any moisture whatsoever in that oil. So the more testing that I do, the more confident I feel that this is not a blown head gasket or any coolant going into the combustion chamber or anything like that into the oil area. Hopefully with this flush included, new synthetic oil and an oil filter, that should solve our issue to a large degree. Oh, hi, didn't see you there. I'm just waiting for the water. I've just added water to the cooling system at the moment. I'm going to run it through just to drain it properly, and then I can dump it again, then I can put my coolant in. So I'm just waiting for the engine to warm up at this stage. Remember in the last video I talked about how when a head gasket blows you might end up with bubbles coming through the cooling system. Now I couldn't prove it with this X-Trail, but I have found some footage that will show it clearly to you so you know what to look for in the future. Check this out. So in this case you can see some minor bubbles coming through. Don't get confused with purging the system of air, but in this case you can see it's consistent. and quite a few bubbles. So this is probably the start of a blown head gasket. Whereas this clip shows that it's a lot worse, doesn't it? You can see it's coming out everywhere. Bad head gasket. This is a HJ75 Land Cruiser that was at the campus where I used to previously work, and in this particular case it's absolutely had it. What caused it was that the pre-combustion chamber had actually cut through the head gasket itself. All that combustion pressure then went into the cooling system and, hey presto, shot out the radiator like a rocket. So it was kind of obvious, wasn't it, that there was bubbles coming into the cooling system, and that indicates combustion gases coming into the cooling area. Remember, another diagnostic process that I mentioned to you was pulling out the spark plugs, pressure testing the cooling system, and then coolant or water may come out of the spark plugs if it's got a blown head gasket. Once again, this X-Trail didn't let us down. It wouldn't play up. But recently, when I was working in a local business or a local workshop, I worked on a vehicle that was absolutely knackered. So check out this video, it's hilarious. Yeah, where you go? Oh, holy crap! I'm thinking we didn't stand back far enough, what do you reckon?
Did you get all the giggling on video?
See these faces? Never trust them. Never trust them. So what do you reckon? Bit of a crack up, hey? That motor is totally knackered. I'd say it's probably got a cracked head minimum. Water shot out of everything. And I ended up putting in about 7 litres of water into that radiator, and then we pressure tested it and it sounded like a toilet filling up. So the new radiator is in. After flushing the cooling system, adding water, then coolant. I've pressure tested the system, as you can see, and it hasn't dropped in the last 10 minutes. So I'm happy that I've solved the pressure loss problem. That was obviously just the top of the radiator leaking. So now, just to top up the coolant, make sure it's the correct level, recheck my oil levels, go for a decent road test, hand it back to the customer. Job's done. I can go inside, have my tea, sit down, maybe kick back and watch some TV. The vehicle is going to stay in the workshop overnight, and I've just taken it for quite a long road test, and I drove it fairly hard. I kept the revs up to it so that I could keep the engine nice and hot. So since it's going to be here overnight, I thought I should release the oil filler cap, and in that way any trapped condensation will be released overnight. Just a thought, may work, may not work. He normally keeps it outside, and we have really cold weather here. As it gets colder and the condensation builds, it creates more condensation, then more condensation. I'll just undo the oil filler cap for now, and hopefully we'll be able to release some of that vapour that's built up. It still looks a bit white in there, but I'm hoping that with the progression of time that should clear quite nicely. The oil filler cap is cleaned quite well. It was quite milky before, so that's all disappeared now. So hopefully the rocker cover should clear given time. So fingers crossed, that's got all our problems sorted. Tomorrow I'll check the oil as well as the coolant before I hand it back to the customer. Then I'll get him to take it for decent long drives so that we can try and get rid of this condensation build up inside. Yes, there's still quite a bit of milky stuff there, although as I said the cap is now clear. I'm hoping overnight, as you can see, a lot of the vapour is bleeding off, coming out into the air, and I'm hoping that eventually that condensation will disappear. We'll check the oil tomorrow and the water and make sure it's all good. So, a new day. I've rechecked the oil level, it's fine, there's no condensation build up in the oil itself. The coolant is okay, no issues there, the level hasn't dropped, which is great. And I was amazed at how much of that condensation, that milky stuff, has disappeared overnight simply by removing the oil filler cap. Best maintenance suggestion that I have for this customer is to use his vehicle regularly for long distances. Get the motor hot. That will get rid of some of that condensation. Guys, I hope you found this video interesting and it's able to help you diagnose whether you have a blown head gasket or not. If you enjoyed this video and haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and always feel free to comment down below. Until next time, this is MiracleMAX signing off. Catch you later.